And also one of the one of the best parts of holding our sales in person is the fact that the general public is able to talk to the horticulture staff here and ask them questions on plant selection and the care and maintenance of the plants, and what plant might do well in the shade versus the sun, or what's their favorite plants, or just any recommendations that they may have. And since we are not able to do that in person, we are holding this Zoom session. So as Greg mentioned, if you guys have any questions, you might be, what is a good plant for, a certain situation, or what's your favorite, or I bought one of these plants, what do I do with it? Whatever kind of questions you guys have, feel free to ask them. We're gonna start with just kind of talking in general about some of the plants that we do have in our inventory, and just some general sort of ideas about growing native plants. I think one question that we kind of get a lot is that, okay, so these plants are drought tolerant. Does that mean that I can plant it in the ground, dig a hole, put it in the ground, and just leave it alone? And that is not the case, right, Amy and Anna?
Yeah. So they have what's called an establishment period, and it's basically means that when you first plant the plant, it doesn't have all the roots that it's going to need, and it has to grow its roots out wider, and you're going to need to water it during that period.
Absolutely. And you want to, make sure that the root ball that was once contained in the pot and that is now in the soil, you need to get that root ball wet, as well as the surrounding soil, to encourage those roots to penetrate the soil and grow down deep into the ground, which will then help the plant become established. And then that is when it becomes truly the drought tolerant plant. And how long would you say, Amy, would be a typical sort of establishment period?
It can vary depending on the plant and whether the weather is cooperating with you, like if you get rain or you don't. But up to 2 years.
Yeah. So it's usually at least about a year or so. So that's why we do sell these plants at the optimum planting time, which is the fall. And then, so hopefully we get a little bit of rain to help establish the plants and help get that root system nice and deep in the ground and put on a lot of good growth. But if that's not the case, then you do have to water them and irrigate them. And then you typically will want to water them a little bit more regularly through that first summer period than you would maybe the summer after the next season. And that, the watering can be a little bit tricky because it kind of depends on the sun exposure, what the weather actually is, and whether you're watering in fall versus summertime, and then the type of soil that you have and things of that nature. But it may be up to even once a week in that first establishment period to perhaps once every other week. And then once they are established, you might be able to get away with, well, ultimately, you may be able to get away with no water whatsoever, but the plants are going to look quite dormant. They might be a lot of deciduous, summer drought deciduous plants that might be in your garden that would lose their leaves and things of that nature. But with perhaps a once a month watering or so, a nice deep soak, you could get those plants through the summer still looking quite nice.
I think another thing to add to that is if you're mulching or not, that will help retain some of the groundwater when you're planting your plant.
Excellent point, Anna. I wanted to mention that as well, that we do advise people to mulch their plants. So that will help, help organisms grow and exist in your soils, as well as trap some moisture and keep the ground a little bit cooler and moist. It keeps your the water that you do apply, keeps it there longer.
And it keeps the weeds down too. So it's always good to have mulch.
Absolutely. So another kind of typical question that we get is, I don't know anything about native plants. I want to start growing some in my garden. What are some good plants to start with? And Amy or Anna, do either of you want to just start with that question or an answer?
I think that salvias, any of the salvias that we have, are pretty good starter plants. You can plant them either in the ground or keep them in the container, just to see how that goes. You can, put it in the container at first and take care of it in the container and see how you like it. And then once you get a feel for how you care for it, you can expand into your landscape, I think.
Cool.
And then
Yeah, salvias are nice. They smell good. The leaves smell good. And they flower a lot and they attract hummingbirds. They also grow pretty quickly. So even though we're gonna sell you a plant that's, like a foot tall, then it'll bulk itself up quickly. Yeah.
That's a good point. Do you guys have some others that you would recommend for the beginner?
I really feel like the California buckwheat, Eriogonum fasciculatum, is really just the most indestructible, like bulletproof plant. Even if you think that, oh, I'm not even a gardener and I kill stuff, the Eriogonum is tough and it's really widely spread across Southern California. It's very common in the wild areas, so it clearly is adapted to all sorts of conditions.
Right.
It flowers pretty late in the spring, more like early summer, really, which is nice for pollinators to get the end of the season food source.
Yeah, a lot of the time it seems like the salvias are done flowering and then the buckwheats are just kind of getting started. But I would definitely agree that buckwheats and sages are, the genus Salvia and the genus Eriogonum are some easy plants to start with, fast growing, like Amy mentioned, pretty easy to establish. They're, very tolerant of a wide range of conditions, which that kind of makes them very garden adaptable. So if maybe you are accidentally watering a little bit too much, a lot of them will be able to sort of adapt to those conditions and do okay.
Say, Greg,
Yeah.
we have a question here from Samuel. He says, I have a 1-year-old blue-eyed grass that grew very fast and floriferous during winter, spring. It has been very brown since June. I know they go dormant, but if it's still alive, when should I expect it to perk back up again?
Good question. Amy or Anna, do you guys want to take that, or?
Amy, it's all you.
It depends on the weather. A lot of them, sometimes they start poking up a little bit when the nights are very cold, but other times it has to wait for a big rain. So we haven't really had any good rainfall yet, and it's probably waiting for the soil to get very wet. But we do have them in our meadow collection, and they come back, and they usually you don't notice them at first while they're short, but then once they start blooming, definitely it's like, wow, look at all of these blue-eyed grass.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would expect that it could be as early as next month. It also does, as Amy mentioned, if you have not been irrigating, then you probably won't see them until we do get a good rain, or unless you start to irrigate, which, you know, that's typically around November is when we will start irrigating here at the Arboretum in some of the areas that don't have any irrigation, some of the native places. We could start as early as November if there's no rain in the forecast. So I would say that I would guess that it is still alive. We do have a lot of blue-eyed grass that goes completely dormant here, completely disappears from above the ground, and it has some rootstock in there that is in the subterranean rootstock that that sprouts back in the fall or winter. So I think you should expect it to perk back up, and, you know, depending on whether you start watering or not in the next month or so. So there are typically, you know, we get a lot of questions on plant selection, because it is a plant sale, and we're there to help people select the plants and try to provide encouragement to people to give things a try. But I did want to point out the a website called Calscapeorg. They have, it is a website put up by the California Native Plant Society, and they have a lot of good information on growing native plants. And if you are really struggling with helping or with deciding and choosing plants, then that could be a good place to start with. Just in general, you could actually go on there and type, I believe you could type in your actual address, or at least your zip code or city, and it will pop up. It'll return a lot of different possible plants to plant in your yard, things that are well adapted to the climate that you live in at your home. So that's an easy way to get started. And then I believe they divide, or they categorize all the plants as, you know, trees, shrubs, perennials, annuals, and there might be some different classifications in there as well. I think they have things, you know, good for shade versus sun, very dry or more wet conditions. So that would be a good place to start, and then you can kind of cross-reference that with our inventory, and you'd be able to choose a lot of the plants that grow in this area. Another way that we kind of encourage people to think about plant selection is to think about maybe one of their favorite areas in California and what some of their favorite plant communities may be. So you might have, you know, things like the coastal sage scrub or chaparral or oak woodland, maybe meadows or the desert areas, maybe the Channel Islands. Those are actually all places where we hold plants in our collection, and the Mojave Desert as well. But we actually have divided our collection up into those different categories that where, you know, usually when we're open, people could go and take a look at plants from all those different plant communities. And then they might be able to get an idea of what they may want to plant in their yard. Amy or Anna, do you guys want to talk about any of your favorite plant communities or areas in the Arboretum that you like, that we have some plants from in our inventory?
Yeah, so the first two you mentioned, the sagebrush and the chaparral kind of communities. Whenever I'm out, you know, going on hikes or whatever, I love the sense that they bring, you know, that sagebrush smell, and I just think it's such a wonderful experience. And if that's something that I could incorporate in my landscape, I would definitely do that. And just walking through our sections, all the wonderful smells, walking through the different areas, it's quite an experience.
Absolutely.
Hey, Anna, I know that, well, I know it. I don't know if everybody else knows it. Anna's also into bees, and very much so. So I'm wondering, Anna, if do our native plants that we have, are they, do they attract bees?
Oh, 100%. You go out there and you see hundreds of bees all over the buckwheat, you know, the Aragonium giganteum in the Channel Islands area. When they were blooming, the bees were all over it. And, you know, all of the stages that they go on, and they're just, you know, you attract the bees, you attract the butterflies, the hummingbirds are all over the stages. It's awesome.
Amy, what
does
about
lead
your
us-
thoughts?
About pollinators or about just ecosystems?
Ecosystem, pollinators, sure.
I always say that sticking as local as possible is definitely a good idea, both from just easiness because the plants are suited for your area, and also for promoting your local species and everything. I can understand though, if you want something like a little bit more interesting, you can go down to the Baja California plants, which are their climate is similar to ours, and a lot of it, and in fact some of these plants grow in San Diego County too, and but they're just like sort of a little bit more novelty for us. So for example, we've got this Galvesia puntabanda, which is a bush snapdragon. It has red tubular flowers, and it's really easy to grow. Great for the hummingbirds. Let's see, we've got, I know we have that Baja spurge, which is a large plant, but it makes a very beautiful pink flower mass. They kind of remind me of cherry blossoms because they'll be pink in the spring. And then
Goodness.
what else do we got? I feel like we have more Baja plants.
We have that Baja phlox, I think, which is a prickly one.
Prickly.
Yeah,
Prickly, but definitely really interesting. The flowers are pretty, I think, perhaps on the Facebook event, that was the cover photo, I believe.
Yeah.
We do have a question from Abby here. Abby asked, California natives for small balcony container gardens with good morning sun. I'm going to guess that's probably an east-facing balcony. Abby's tried yarrow. She tried it last year, but that did not do well in pots. Do we have anything that might help Abby out on her patio?
well, I think if she has morning sun, so she would have shade later on. I feel like the monkey flower could do well in pots as long as it gets some shade. That's the Diplocus.
Aurantiaca.
It was previously the Mimulus. I feel like that could do well in a container. So she could try that, and it has the cute little flowers.
Cool thing about those flowers is that the stigma is actually tactilely sensitive. So it's kind of has kind of an open mouth like that. And if you take a little stick or something and you kind of brush that stigma, you could actually watch it close up. So it's kind of fun for kids and stuff. It's always fun to interact with plants in that way when you could touch it and see it move.
So an interactive plant, hadn't considered that as an attribute to plants, but you can play with them and they'll play with you. Why not?
Yeah.
I think that some Dudleya would be good. They're very easy to grow in pots because they naturally sort of stick themselves in rock crevices and they're used to not having a whole lot of soil. You do want to be careful not to overwater them because you will rot them. But otherwise, it's a a nice succulent.
I think that's an excellent choice. I really like the Dudleya Brittonia, which is actually one of those Baja plants that we were talking about. There's another one. I love the very, very chalky white leaves of that Dudleya. It's very cool. Very, very cool.
Samuel has another question here. Is Gaur coccinea native to Orange County? I can't seem to find any reference to it in the wildflower guide by Bob Allen and Roberts, but CalFlora lists it as occurring, but Calscape does not.
So I actually thought that plant was more of a desert thing, existing more in like the Mojave Desert, I believe. Yeah.
That would explain why it's not in Bob's book.
Yeah, I don't think, I've never seen it in Orange County, so I would not say that it is, but perhaps it has been, I'm not sure.
Well, CalFlora on their map has 2 dots in Orange County. But it looks like mostly in the desert in San Bernardino, although they also have the dots in like, which county is this? Ventura? And some in San Diego. It also apparently has changed names. They recommend Oenothera sfrutocosens as being a synonym.
Okay.
So you might try looking under different names too.
That's a good point.
This map? I don't know.
I think some other ones for that, some other possible container plants would be possibly the Nevin's woolly sunflower. That would be a cool one for that east-facing balcony. It would do well in pots. I think it would actually like the afternoon shade. And that one has very white, hairy leaves that are pinnately lobed. So it's a very kind of interesting looking plant even when it's not in flower, and then when it is in flower, it does attract quite a few butterflies because it forms that nice, a nice broad landing platform for butterflies to land and drink up the nectar out of the clusters of flowers. So that would be a cool one. But that does kind of lead us, we've talked quite a bit about it, or a little bit here and there, but the fact, the idea of attracting pollinators to your garden with natives. And I think it's really important to note that all of these native plants are native to California, where many other native insects and animals also exist. And these plants and animals have co-evolved to work together in their natural environment. So I think that, if you want to attract pollinators, some of these native plants are some of the best plants to do the job. Some of my favorite plant pollinator interactions, well, one would be the Ribes speciosum, the fuchsia flowered gooseberry. It is a spiny plant. It would be good in a shady situation. Very drought tolerant. In the summertime, it actually goes deciduous and loses all of its leaves, and all you see are spiny twigs, which I think is pretty cool. But when they are in flower, they could be absolutely covered and just dripping with these pendant red colored flowers that look a lot like a fuchsia. And they kind of, the way that the plant grows is they kind of has arching stems with all these red flowers just dangling from these long arching stems, and then it's perfect for hummingbirds to come in and just hover and drink out of that nectar. So that would be, it's a very, very cool plant. Hummingbirds love it, and it's a
I'm thinking that if Abby was going to get just one plant for her balcony, it might be that one.
Yeah, that one, it would do okay in pots. But for a balcony, yeah, it could work.
I just feel like you wouldn't want to be brushing up against it all the time. Like if it was a small balcony, then you
After the second time, you'd learn.
not gonna run into it anymore.
What about, so Amy and Anna, do you guys have some maybe favorite pollinator plant interactions that you've noticed?
Well, I feel like the Salvia clevelandii attract so many different types of pollinators. You get your hummingbirds, you get your butterflies, and even the Sphinx moth will come and visit that one. And that one's really cool because it's so large. You're like, oh, what is that? Is it a hummingbird? No, it's a moth. So that's always really fun for me to see in the garden.
I have seen those Sphinx moths visiting the salvia flowers before, and that is an amazing sight. Whenever I see moths flying around in general, I always feel like they're so erratic in their flight. They look like half the time they don't even know where they're flying. They're just kind of flying around. But then you see them actually pull up to a flower and stick their long tongue into a flower, and that was pretty amazing to see.
It is very awesome.
What do you think, Amy?
It depends on what kind of pollinators you want to attract. I feel like all of the plants have their own special ones. Like we have these little bees, the native cactus bees. They sleep. The males actually sleep in the opuntia flowers at night. Because the females live in the ground and they dig little nest tunnels, but the males don't go in and they sort of cuddle in these flowers. And sometimes, like if I go out hiking in the evening, I pull the flowers open to try to look for the sleeping bees. So that's really special. But just like general pollinators, probably the buckwheat is the powerhouse. Everything goes for the buckwheat, and it blooms pretty late in the summer when a lot of the insects, if their population has come up since they already went through all of the spring flowering plants. They also say that the coyote bush, which blooms really late in almost the fall, is an important nectar source in that time of year when other stuff's not blooming.
That's an excellent point. So a lot of those tubular shaped flowers are favorites of hummingbirds. And it is pretty cool to see how, those plants present their tubular flowers in such a way so that it's just perfect for a hummingbird to pull up and drink that nectar. And the butterflies, much like the way that the buckwheat grows, they kind of typically have clusters of flowers, which again make that good landing platform for a butterfly to go land and then just sip nectar. I sometimes just sit there and watch their tongue move from flower to flower, just dipping in and just lapping up the nectar. It's pretty awesome to see.
You can also consider birds that will come to eat the plants. Besides hummingbirds, which are pollinators, you might also get birds that want to eat the seeds or the fruit. So for example, we have this bunch of the evening primrose, Anothera, and out near where I turn on the avocado irrigation. So I go out there in the morning and I always have to scare away the cloud of bush tits that's eating the seeds.
Really?
Yeah. Or also those sambucus, the elderberries. The birds love to eat those.
Definitely.
It's hard for me to even collect them to grow for our sale because if you wait too long, then the birds have gotten them all already.
Get them all.
Do we have any for our sale, or did the birds get all of the seeds?
No, we have a good supply.
Definitely.
Can we talk a little bit about some of the plants that we do have for sale?
Yeah.
Let's pick one. What do we have that you like out there in our inventory right now, Amy?
Oh, it's really hard for me to pick a favorite one. We have so many cool things. We have a whole bunch of the Hespero Yucca, which is used to be called just Yucca. The common names are Our Lord's Candle or Chaparral Yucca. And it's a little bit of a funny thing in the garden because it's one of those plants that's only going to bloom once, but I feel like that's going to make it even more special and interesting because you got to wait for it. And it makes a really big, tall spike of creamy white flowers in the spring. And then there's actually a specific kind of moth that pollinates the flowers. And it kind of baffles me that, you know, I've never seen one of these moths, but they must be around because the plants bloom in the arboretum and then I get the seeds and the seeds are viable, they grow. So something must have pollinated them. And I'm like, was the yucca moth here?
Probably was.
Yeah. So that plant is another thing that grows on steep hillsides and it's very drought tolerant. Don't hardly need to water it even in the establishment period. It's pretty tough. And it depends on, you know, the weather and what it feels like, but it takes, you know, maybe 3 years for it to bloom. And then afterward, that's going to be the end. Monocarpic means that they die after blooming.
We do occasionally have that that one multi-headed variety, though.
Oh yeah. So
I don't think we don't have that this year, though, do we?
No, but it is, that one is a cool one because each head will make its own flower. So bonus.
Yeah. And that one I think has a pretty limited distribution, kind of along the southern Mojave Desert, so kind of at the edge of the San Bernardino Mountains, on the sort of as you go to the desert side of the San Bernardino and San Gabriel Mountains, right along there, there's quite a few of those growing.
I saw them blooming at the Devil's Punch Bowl
Very
2
nice.
years ago.
Yeah.
And had been a really wet spring, so they were just blooming everywhere, and they were right next to the trail, and there would be a multi-headed clump with like 4 flower stalks.
It's awesome.
Unfortunately, that park burned in I think it was the El Dorado fire. They lost their buildings too. The nature center is gone.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Hey, Anna, maybe you can talk a little bit about your favorite plant that we have for sale in our inventory.
So we have it's the Abutilon palmeri. It's the Indian mallow, and I think this is a really cool plant just because the leaves are so soft. I like to go and touch them, and you know they're very textile, and they have a lovely flower, and I think their coloration is very nice as well. Their leaf color. I also am very partial to the sage brushes. You know, we have our Artemisia californica, but we also have the palmate one. It's the Artemisia. Hold on, sorry. Artemisia palmeri. That one was an easy one. That one is it's different to look at them both next to each other, just because the palmeri has such a unique leaf shape. We have that one for sale here at the Arboretum. I think it's pretty cool.
Shows
Well,
up
we have
on
a
the-
lot of plants.
So
So
how does one go about buying a plant from us from the sale?
So I'll talk about that one. We do have a unique system of ordering due to the fact that we don't really have an easy online ordering system, and we have not had time to really put that together. So in order to place your order, you could go online and browse our shopping list. I'll call it the shopping list. It kind of has a lot of information about all the different plants that are in the inventory. You could check that out and get a good idea of what you would want. And then you go to our order form. This is all on the on our native sale webpage. You would go to the order form, which is a PDF document. You have to download that, fill it out, and just fill in the quantities of each plant that you want to purchase. And then you save that and send it to Harriet Bolden. Her email is on the web page as well. And then we get that list, we get that order form, fill out the order, check it against our current inventory. We have sold out of a few dozen plants already. Make sure that we have the plants, put the order together, and then we send that back to Harriet. She will then send the order form to the customer with a amount due. The customer will then pay for that on our shopping cart on our website. And then once we get confirmation of that, we set up a pickup time. So the pickup time will be any time within the next 2 weeks, starting on Monday, November 2nd, and ending on Friday, the 13th. It's a little bit confusing, but all the steps are clearly outlined on our webpage, the native plant sale webpage.
And as far as the pickup goes, it's a curbside pickup. So you just show up, stay in your car. We find out who you are. You can show us your license or something. And then we bring the order to the car and we'll put it in your trunk or the bed of your truck or wherever you want it.
Right. So it could be kind of a little bit more convenient in some manner as to coming
We
here.
just don't plant them for you once you get them home.
No, we do not do that. That is
But
left up.
we have another question here from Jenny. She hasn't had one in here yet. Jenny says, "Hi, thanks for doing this. I'm new to the area and excited to start populating the backyard. It's very steep and very dry and it's been hard to water as the water just flows down the slope. We have a few places like that at the Arboretum, Jenny. I imagine something for erosion control would be helpful. I like the idea of honeysuckle with very fragrant flowers that could cover the slope. It's a very sunny slope too. Lots of things easily shrivel up after planting. Do we have anything that might be able to help Jenny out on this?"
We do. Do either of you guys, Amy or Anna, want to take that question or?
Yeah, so the lucky thing is that California is full of slopes, so it's kind of our jam. I do want to talk a little bit about the honeysuckle. You mentioned a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of the honeysuckles are not native. The most popular one, for example, if you were just to go to a store, is the Japanese honeysuckle, and it's kind of borderline invasive, actually. It does get into the wild sometimes, and that's not good. So I would not recommend that one. We do have a native honeysuckle. I think, unfortunately, it's marked as sold out.
It is.
But just to let you know, there is a native honeysuckle, and so if you want to go that route, you should be careful. Get the native one. But otherwise, a lot of California plants are slope stabilizing, and anything that would be like quick growing would be especially easy. The coyote bush or the buckwheat. Those yuccas that I mentioned, they stick out of cliffs all the time. And what do you think, Greg?
I like the sound of all those plants actually. You know, I like to think about some of the slopes and things that we have here actually, and consider those in the answer. So yeah, the buckwheats, the coastal buckwheat is a great one. That one, when I think of slopes, a lot of times I think kind of like a flowing kind of spilling plant coming down the slope, and kind of almost like a ground cover situation is a good idea to just cover a lot of ground. So low growing, sprawling things are good. Things such as that, like I said, the buckwheat. We also have a very interesting hybrid buckwheat that it's kind of a new thing that popped up in the garden here. I think it's just labeled as hybrid buckwheat on our, hybrid California buckwheat on our native plant list. I think it is actually part of the hybridized with the California buckwheat, and then something else. It may have been, well, actually, I'm not sure. I really don't know. Maybe Eriogonum grande, perhaps, or another low growing buckwheat of some sort. But that one is so far, it's ended up being a pretty tough plant, pretty fast growing. I think they've been flowering on and off to varying degrees all through the summer. Kind of like a very light green leaf, kind of limey colored green.
Greg, didn't you talk about that in one of your videos?
I did a little bit, yeah.
So actually, Jenny, you could go on to our YouTube and look at the, what was that called? Catherine's Lace video?
Yeah, it was part of the St. Catherine's Lace.
Right, check that out, Jenny. And you know, Jenny says that she's never been to the Arboretum, so she's just moved here to the area. Jenny, when we open, I hope you're one of the first people to come in and check us out. I think you're going to really like what you see. We're a great resource for people who want to know about plants, plant plants, or just love plants and be in the environment. And here in North Orange County, you can't really get any more lost in the woods than you can at the Arboretum. Samuel has another question, and it's about his St. Catherine's Lace, which was incredibly prolific last year. He had dozens of year-old plants crowded together in a small patch. And apparently, I guess he tried to dig them out and plant them into pots in late spring. But he killed some of them. It didn't work out, the transplanting. Do you have any recommendations on how one would dig them out without killing them?
What do you guys think?
I think the timing was his mistake. He said he dug them up in late spring, but that's like probably the opposite. You should dig them up in the fall or the winter,
Right.
after the ground is soft from the rain and the weather is more mild, so that the little plants won't be so shocked. When we grow them, we actually sow them in a group flat. So we just throw a whole bunch of seeds, and then usually the volunteers do this. They dump them all out and they pick them apart. And so I know they do survive being picked apart because we do that. But I think it was the time of year. Yeah.
Also, in general, when I attempt to dig plants out of the ground like that, like seedlings and things of that nature, I always find that the smaller ones tend to work a little bit better than bigger ones. Like, so if you had a plant that's maybe, I don't know, a foot tall versus a plant that only has maybe, 10 leaves on it and it's only 3 or 4 inches tall, I've had more success with that smaller plant than with the bigger one. for in a lot of cases.
The disruption of the root establishment. If you mess with the roots too much, it could put the plant in shock and ultimately kill the plant. So I agree with what you guys are saying for sure.
Yeah, and so the smaller plants have kind of a shorter root system. So when you do dig it up, you're hopefully keeping more of that root ball intact. And also digging it up if, you know, after a rain, or just when the water, or when the soil is wet, will be a better idea, because you'll be able to lift it out of the ground a little more gently and kind of tease the soil away from the roots to put it in a pot. So yeah,
going back to the previous question about that honeysuckle, Jenny's wondering if that native honeysuckle, Amy, is it fragrant?
That's a good question. Have any of you remembered smelling it? I don't remember smelling it.
I don't think it is.
I don't think so.
Not in the same way that
What's the name of it? Lonicera what?
It's Lonicera subspicata. I'm actually typing that, but I'll hit send here in a minute.
Yeah, maybe someone could look that up and see if somebody out there claims it has fragrance or not.
Yeah.
I have not noticed it myself.
I know it has the yellowish and the cream colored flowers, but I can't remember if it's fragrant.
Well, we're about to wrap this up here, getting near the top of the hour. So our sale is right now. You can go online to our website, look at the list of plants for sale, and follow the instructions on how to order them if you're interested in picking up some native plants. And if you are, I hope we have left what you're looking for. Unfortunately, the native honeysuckle is not available right now. I guess it's sold out, but we'll probably have it again.
Well, we do have, sorry, we do have the clematis, which is kind of similar. It's a vine.
Yes. And that one I know it does not have fragrance, that one.
No, it doesn't. I've never seen anyone use it as a ground cover. That would be curious. But
I'm sure it could work. I don't see why it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Although if it was near anything that was tall, it would try and climb up it.
Climb up it.
Yeah. So Greg, Anna, Amy, do any of you have any last words that you'd like to say before we sign off here?
So the I think the cutoff for ordering is November 8th. So get the orders in by November 8th. And you know, I think it's really just something to take a shot at and give these natives a try.
Yeah.
I got to say, they're a lot more interesting than grass.
Definitely.
Which is in my neighborhood, but mostly everybody's front yard is just grass. So except for mine, it's not. But anyway, Anna, Amy, any parting words?
Well, I just, thank you guys for showing up to our Q&A, and we really appreciate your continued support during this time of closure. It's been a process for sure.
Yeah, I would like to just point out that our ecosystems in Southern California are very unique, and they're found nowhere else in the world. And a lot of them have been really highly disturbed from urbanization. So for example, you can kind of imagine Orange County in your head, and almost all of it is just urban. We got some mountains on the edge, but a lot of it is gone. So if everybody had just a few native plants in their front yard, then we could try to keep some of our local ecosystems going in part.
Okay, then. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for showing up during the lunch hour, and watch our website. We're going to be doing this again, maybe not about native plants. It'll probably be about something else. Or we might just have a regular Q&A again, like we did a couple of months ago with our curator, and maybe we'll have a horticulturist or two also. But we can talk about any plants, not just natives, but you know, whatever blows your hair back. So with that, we'll see y'all later. Watch our website, help support us, become a member, buy plants from us, and when we open, come see us. So talk soon. Bye.